Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 9th, and today we're talking state politics with none other than Mark Z. Barabak, the, political columnist now, no longer reporter, has been promoted for California and the West. Thanks so much for taking time, brother. It's always good to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
And when I went and looked at your new bio for being a political columnist, I saw that you not only have covered 11 presidential campaigns, which I knew, but that you had covered other campaigns in 49 of 50 states, which I did not know. What is the one state?
That's one of the big questions I get all the time. Rhode Island. I have not made it to Rhode Island. So I'm working on it. I figure, when Kamala does her presidential announcement from Narragansett, I'll check that one off my list.
All right. Looking forward to the Rhode Island Bureau. All right. Let's start with the recall, just because we have to. I guess the recall of Governor Newsom has now been scheduled for September 14th, which means that ballots are going to go out, or middle August or something like that. You wrote about it this week a little bit and thought that Newsom not only would prevail, but would actually emerge stronger from the recall heading into his reelection, of course, next year. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I should say, I was quoting someone, Clint Riley, for your viewers who may not know him, longtime political strategist in San Francisco. He was the one that was making the prediction. I'm out of the predictions business. It was his prediction,
ever since you went with President Paul Tsongas in 1992.
Yeah, exactly. But I do, the point that I wanted to make with the column, and the point that, Clint reinforces this idea that Gavin is certainly the favorite, and I use the recall of your good friend, Senator Dianne Feinstein, the attempted recall of Mayor Feinstein, just to make the point that, I quoted a line from The Wire, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you better not miss. The idea being, as you suggest on the lead-in, if this part I did write, if Gavin beats the recall, which I think we both agree seems more likely than not, then who's going to run against him in 2022, right? Are you going to get John Cox for a third time? Republicans, they can't take him out in September, what's supposing to be able to do so in June or November of next year? Sure, something else could come up. You could do something really stupid again and, I don't know, go back to the French Laundry for dessert with a lobbyist, but, they can't take him out under that circumstance. It's really hard to see how they beat him in a general election, which brings us full circle. That's probably why we're having a recall, because they can't take him out, or it'll be very difficult to take him out in a normal election setting.
Well, I mean, the one scenario, I guess, that you could draw where he could lose, of course, is that the people who want him recalled are much more motivated than the people who are not. And, that's why there was a lot of monkey business, I guess, going on with the date and when would the date be and so on and so forth. And I guess the Democrats and Gavin feel he's in as strong a position now as he's likely to be. He's got all his money he's given away. The state hasn't burned down yet. We haven't had any brownouts recently. So I guess it's a turnout argument.
Yeah, as they say in politics, if you got the votes, call the roll. And I think if he could have the vote tomorrow, he would. Obviously, he can't do it tomorrow. But yeah, it's like get this thing done sooner rather than later. I mean, if there's a scenario, I always ask folks the counter argument to what they're saying. You talk to them, they'll say, here's what's going to happen. Here's why I think it's going to happen. And I say, if you're wrong, and I always say, don't give me the alien abduction theory. Aliens come down, kidnap, Gavin Newsom. That's not going to happen. So what's the plausible? What is a plausible? If we're sitting here having this conversation, you have me back on your show against your better judgment, and the demand, the sentiment of your audience. I'm back. We're talking about, Gavin got recalled. What happened? I think the plausible within the realm of possibility explanation would be what you suggest, that a lot of people just figured, he's not going to be recalled. I'm not going to bother to vote. A lot of people who are very ginned up by the recall turnout. That to me is how if Gavin were to be recalled, that's what it's going to be. As you suggest, it's going to be the motivation, the energy is on the recall side of it. They all turn out. complacency or whatever keeps the anti-recall people home, boom, then we have a recalled governor.
Yeah, and if we recall our late great friend Cam Kawada, who always said every campaign is about three things: money, message, and mechanics. I mean, Gavin has more money than God now. I mean, everybody's just cannot, every special interest in the state and tech and everybody else can't wait to give him more money. So he's winning that. His message is kind of like, why are we doing this? I guess,
Right.
or we're back, or we're roaring back, or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the message on the other side is altogether, other than, he went to the French Laundry and he's a bad guy.
Right.
And then organizationally, I mean, come on.
Well, and that's, we really haven't seen much of a campaign. We've certainly seen, campaign in terms of a campaign infrastructure, to use a popular word these days, right? I mean, we've seen the governor going around picking up garbage off freeways and, handing out money for vaccines and lotteries and, playing Santa Claus all over the state. We really haven't seen, and we're probably not likely to see until it kicks in, sort of the mechanics of it. I mean, you have to imagine with all that money, they're going to be building a very sophisticated get out the vote operation. They have an advantage now. Every Californian is going to get a ballot. So, that's at least part of the battle, right? It's sort of like all you got to do is get people to fill those things out. It's a much easier step, but that's the mechanical piece of it. And I think we'll see that start kicking in probably pretty soon, July and certainly August.
Yeah. And then one more footnote on the recall. With all that money and all those political geniuses who you and I have known for decades, he somehow managed to not identify himself as a Democrat on the ballot, and now has to go to court to try to get that on. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's embarrassing, but I got to believe, anyone who is is paying even somewhat attention, somewhat close, someone who's following this even remotely will know Gavin Newsom. And yes, it's embarrassing, and it does kind of make you wonder what all those high-paid consultants are doing. But I don't think there's going to be a great number of people who are going to go to the polls and say, let's see, is John Cox the Democrat? Is Gavin Newsom the Republican?
Yeah. All right. Well, let me segue into another column you wrote this week, which is about how Republicans are struggling, California Republicans in particular are struggling with how much or how little to identify with Trump. You can explain the case of it, but I was particularly interested in Kevin Faulconer, the former mayor of San Diego, who seems like kind of the most legit candidate in this field of so-called challengers, which may be as many as 100 people in the recall. And he's kind of trying to have it both ways. So what's the problem, and how are people trying to address it?
Well, the problem is that you have a president who is incredibly popular with the Republican base, which is to say,
ex-president.
An ex-president. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Correct. Yes, that's right. We did have an election. That's right, and they certified the vote. I remember now. It's all coming back to me. Okay. You have a former president who remains exceedingly incredibly. I mean, I said, supporters stick to him like epoxy. I mean, there's nothing that will draw them away. Hugely popular with a meaningful portion of the Republican base. And by the same token, a president who is extremely unpopular with a lot of other voters, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans who voted Democratic or for the Democratic candidate in 2018 and 2020. So there's that bind. I mean, simply put, you have to be Trumpy enough to keep the Trumpy people happy, but you can't be too Trumpy. That's the bind you face. And so I kind of put the candidates on a spectrum. Over here, you have Caitlyn Jenner, who basically is running as a carbon of Donald Trump. I don't think we take her very seriously as a candidate. I certainly don't. I said basically this is all about mainlining publicity, which is her drug of choice, and turning it into a merchandising opportunity. Then you have this Marianne Schubert. She's the DA in Sacramento. She left the Republican Party altogether. She's running for Attorney General. She said it's not a Trump thing. I have views on both sides. It's a good position to be in if you're running for statewide office. So, we have her leaving the party. And then sort of in the middle, you have Lan-Hee Chen. He's the Stanford University professor and policy savant who announced he's running for controller. Interestingly to me, it's kind of like the worst of all worlds. I don't get it, but won't say whether he voted for Trump or not. I don't understand it. It seems to me you don't satisfy anybody that way. And it also doesn't speak real strongly to having a backbone and making the tough decisions and standing up and saying yes or no. Then that gets us to Kevin Faulconer, who to me is sort of the strangest of them, because he said, his words, I could never vote for Donald Trump. His rhetoric is too divisive.
This is in 2016, he said.
This is in 2016, right? 2020, he votes for him. So it's like, okay, well, what was it? Was it trying to blackmail the Ukraine into digging up dirt on Joe Biden? Is it, downplaying the pandemic and tanking the economy and helping contribute to the deaths of all, right? So what exactly is it that, and I put those questions actually in the form of a column, have not heard back from him. But that's the curious thing. So he's trying to have it both ways, as you suggest. It's like one day he's palling around with Devin Nunes and other Trumpy acolytes. And the next he's like, I didn't ask him again. I haven't had the pleasure, but he was asked, I heard an interview with him on KQED radio. They asked him about that very question. You voted for him. What does that say? Oh, well, voters don't want to debate about national politics and blah, blah, and just kind of elides it. So, again, a very strange case because, again, I mean, he just flat out said could never support the guy. And then after 4 years of the administration decided, well, his words, he was better for the economy.
Yeah. Well, and A. Smith, one of Gavin's, or maybe his chief strategist, I notice on his Twitter feed, tweets out a picture of from the Oval Office of Faulkner and Trump
Right.
Just about every day.
Yeah.
Well, but then let me stay on Faulkner for a second, because so let's assume that Newsom beats the recall. Does having been in the recall help or hurt Faulkner for 2022, or does it doesn't matter?
I think he has said, as you suggest, he has said that he's going to run regardless. I mean, does it help? Does it hurt him? I mean, if you run once, we'll see how well he does. You run once and you lose. I'm not sure what the argument. I do want to say, having just been critical of how he's handled Trump, to say something in defense of or something favorable about Trump. I mean, he has run a serious campaign. He has put, I know you and I are both big issue guys, but he has put policy out there. I mean, he's not running around the state with a bear or a big pile of garbage. I mean, he is actually running a campaign where he's putting ideas and thoughts out there. So giving credit where it's due, he has run a substantive campaign. A contrast again with John Cox, with his bear, certainly with Caitlyn Jenner, with all her merchandising activities. Does it help him or does it hurt him? I mean, I don't know. California is not a state. It's funny. Certain states, Ohio, for example, sort of had this tradition where you had to run once and then lose. There's a long line of people. Right. Your home state, your native state, right? There's a long tradition of people who ran once and lost. It was almost like a rite of passage. I'm trying to think of anyone who ran statewide and lost in California, and I don't know what the argument would be. Kevin Faulkner runs and loses in the recall. He runs again next year. I mean, I don't know. Second time's the charm.
Well, Dianne, I mean, it was two different offices. She lost in 90 and came back and won in 92 for Senate. So
right.
That's the only thing that occurs. And then, of course, Jerry losing for Senate in 82 and then coming back to win everything.
Yes, like what, 20 years later.
Working his way down the career ladder.
That's right. Jerry being sui generis, of course.
Started from, let me ask you about this Anna, it's Anne Marie Schubert is her name, the district attorney of Sacramento. And she's already announced that she's going to challenge Rob Bonta, who is the appointed attorney general to Javier Becerra's place when he went to Washington. Now she's running as a no party preference. She's running as an independent.
Yeah, and that's that. It's an interesting and I guess sort of paradoxical thing because it's all the rage these days and all the fashion to say, oh well, I don't vote for the man or the woman. I vote for the party, and parties don't have a very good reputation these days. So on paper, and again, the no predictions thing. On paper, it's a pretty good. It's certainly, I think it's certainly better. In some ways, to be running without the scarlet R beside your name here in California. But it's really tough. And we've seen people, our friend Dan Schnur and a handful of others have run as independents. And, I did a story some years back. And again, it's very fashionable to talk about, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm an independent. But at the end of the day, most people, if you strip away all the all the falderall and the this and the that, people are basically fundamentally, they lean D or they lean R. So there's always the danger, if you're not, that you're the man or the woman without a country. And that's the risk that she could run.
Yeah, well, we remember the Dan Schnur for Secretary of State campaign very well. 2014, he finished behind Leland Yee, who had just been indicted by the U.S. attorney for.
Yeah.
So that
Which
was,
is not a rap on Dan so much. Look, a lot of people use these things as cues. I mean, a lot of people don't, we call them normal people, don't follow politics as closely as you and I do, and they look for cues. And one cue is an R or a D beside the candidate's name. And it's really, really tough, not impossible, but it's very tough to be a third party or a no party preference person.
well, and the other thing is, I think it depends on the office, because we also saw Steve Poizner, a longtime Republican, run as a no party preference for insurance commissioner. And he was actually leading on election night. He ended up getting beat when they counted the 27 million ballots they found on the floor. But I think that office in particular is a place where people would say, you know, that's not a bad idea. Why don't we have somebody else?
Right.
Maybe Attorney General is as well, particularly when you have this debate going on about criminal justice. And
yeah, she's an interesting candidate. Yeah, she's an interesting candidate and an impressive one, as you suggest. I mean, we do have this debate going on about criminal justice reform, and I think that could be a really, really interesting referendum on the two approaches we see out there.
Yeah, and then our friend, your colleague Seema Mehta had a piece this week on the 25th congressional district, which we keep an eye on here in Santa Barbara because there's part of Ventura in there. Mike Garcia, who won by, I think, 332 votes or something, the Republican,
yeah,
over Christy Smith, the Democratic assembly person. Looks like a rematch is going to go on. Now, he's a guy who sort of, you know, said, I'm independent minded and so on, but then has gone completely full Trump since he's been there. And the question is that going to come back to hurt him? I guess my question is, I don't understand, because there's like people lining up to run. Nobody knows where the district is going to be yet.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you talk about redistricting a little bit and when we're going to find out where the lines are and where people are actually running?
My understanding is maybe August or September. I mean, I know there's been some stuff about the numbers and the census and delays because of the pandemic, because of some of the underfunding from the Trump administration. The numbers are late coming in. Yeah, a lot of people don't even know where they're going to be running.
And we're losing a seat. California's losing a seat.
We're going to lose a seat, and two, it's going to be drawn by a commission. The line's going to be drawn by a commission. I mean, you can imagine if the line drawing was in the fine hands of the Berman brothers or the Burtons, you could very well see, you know, maybe Kevin McCarthy having a seat disappear out from under him. You know, we're going to have a commission, a independent commission, at least nominally. You know, you could question how independent they are. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But yes, we've taken it away from the politicians. That was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's reforms. One of, I would say, the most significant reforms he got through. So yeah, it's going to be a commission. And as you suggest, we don't exactly know. You know, just to come back to Mike Garcia, I mean, he really is, to my mind, one of the more curious. I mean, here's a guy who, as you said, barely won in a very, very competitive, very, very purple district. And he ran, I mean, I did a piece on the primary. I think it was June. This
is the Katie Hill seat, or
this is the Katie Hill seat. Yeah, this is the Katie Hill seat. Yeah, and it was open, and he was elected to fill that seat. And you know, he was kind of giving a little wink, wink, you know, Trumpy dog whistle kind of signals during that race to people if you followed it closely and knew what he was doing. But you know, wouldn't talk to the media.
Still has not talked to the media. Still has not talked to the media. Has not given an interview to anybody, as far as I know, in California.
Yeah, no, he just writes columns in the Santa Clarita, whatever the local paper there is, just a friendly outlet. So no, he doesn't talk to reporters. He's voted, you know, he's conducted himself in a very Trumpy fashion, you know, refused to certify the election results, showed up at this Devin Nunes Freedom Festival with, you know, all sorts of Trumpy acolytes. That's the one that Kevin Falco also spoke at. So I don't know. It's he's going to go down he's either going to triumph or he's going to go down waving the Trump banner. But it's very interesting and sort of defies what one would think is the way one would comport oneself given how narrowly drawn. Well, I can't say how narrowly drawn that district is, but how competitive one imagines his reelect is going to be. He's a top target for Democrats.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, looking at the midterms. I guess the conventional wisdom now is that the party that's not in the White House historically benefits, and because of the Trump factor and the energizing of the base, Republicans are favored to, I guess, take back the Senate, maybe pick up the House. What's your lay of the land right now on the midterms?
Well, at the risk of sounding conventionally, I wouldn't say wise, it sounded, embracing the conventional wisdom. Yeah, I mean, you look at those trends that you talk about, you look at the way the lines are going to be drawn in a number of states that would seem to advantage Republicans. You have to put your money on Republicans taking back the House. The Senate is more of a jump ball. There's competitive seats on both sides, and those two tend to move, and they don't always move. The history of the out party winning House seats is much more consistent than the out party winning Senate seats. So, I think you have to lay your money on Republicans winning back the House. I think the Senate is more of a jump ball, to use a cliche. I do want to come back to the recall because I think some of what we talked about is germane, and this is just my half-baked theory, but I think it's something we should look for next year. If, let's just go with the scenario that Gavin Newsom is reelected, and Republicans are struggling to put up a serious candidate, or there's just a sense that, he's going to be reelected, why bother? You can see a real turnout problem among Republicans. Remember in 2018, they ginned up that gas tax repeal, which was all about trying to get Republicans energized to turn out. Didn't work too well. Democrats won like 7 seats. Republicans won some of those back. But if I was a Republican strategist, I would be concerned that if this recall goes down in flames, and Republicans are like, say, running John Cox for the 3rd time, and a weakened Kevin Faulconer or whomever, there could be a lot of Republicans that say, you know what, why bother? Gavin's gonna be reelected. We took a shot at him. We missed. Why bother to turn out? Then you start having problems down ballot.
Right, which is a big deal in terms of the House, because we remember that the 7 seats they picked up in 2018, the Democrats picked up, were really crucial. In the end, I guess they ended up with 40 or something like that. But that was a sign. And then the Republicans came back and won back, 4 or 5 of those seats.
4. They won back 4, and a couple of those were close. I mean, a couple of those were very, very close. So that the oldest cliche in the book, it comes down to turnout. But again, if you have a depressed Republican base, that's a problem for Republicans.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then, just in terms of the political landscape and the issues, I mean, the theory of the case for Biden and the Democrats has been, we're going to govern, we're going to get stuff done, we're going to send trillions of dollars, we're going to, get vaccines distributed.
Right.
My sense is they're not, everybody said, oh, Obama did a great job, but, he didn't really not everybody, but the Democrats said he didn't communicate well. He didn't have a message about what they had done. I kind of see Biden falling on the same thing. Do you?
Well, it's early. We're sort of in the governing phase, if you will. I mean, we're in the first year of the administration. The campaign will really start picking up probably right around this time next year, and certainly from Labor Day on. So, I think that's when we're going to see a lot of the messaging. I mean, he is going around the country, I think, in a way. I'm trying to remember how much Obama did it, but he is going around the country and doing a lot of events. He was just in a swing district, I think in Illinois this week, where he made a pitch for it. It was one of the very, very competitive districts. We had a story, I think it was in Illinois, very competitive race, and made a point of saying, hey, you need to keep her. I can't remember who the her was. So, you see Biden doing that, but I mean, I don't think. I think it's a little early. I think we'll get a better sense of how aggressive the messaging is. I don't think there'll be any shortage of cabinet members and other proxies going around the country next year pushing whatever it is that they manage to accomplish.
Well, I guess, when I see it as kind of mushy, and also obviously they have this ideological difference between the AOC wing and really the Biden wing of the party. And at the same time, you see the Republicans already, put aside the Trump question, it's like crime. They want to defund the police and people are dying, murders everywhere. I mean, you can already see the ads. And then this whole critical race theory issue, which has become for Republicans and conservatives shorthand for anything we don't like about race or anti-racism. And so it seems their messaging is already clear. It's very emotional. It's appeals to grievance, and they're just much better at this, I think, than the Democrats.
Well,
Nationalizing a message is what I'm saying.
I mean, look, it's like the old what do they say in court? If the law is with you, argue the law. If the facts are with you, argue the facts. Look, if the economy was in the tank, Republicans would be talking about this horrible economy and how bad it is. I mean, the economy is booming. We're now facing this Delta variant of COVID-19, which is making our comeback a little more sketchy than it was. But let's say that's a blip and it's not a spike and it's not another huge crisis. The Republicans can't make the case on COVID. They can't make the case on the economy. So what do you turn to? You talk about critical race theory. You talk about defunding the police, which there is some evidence that it worked on their behalf in 2022. So you come back to it.
Yeah. Let me ask you about another column real quick that you had recently. You went to visit my old literally friends at the Rossmore Democratic Club there.
Yes.
In the retirement community in the mysterious East Bay in San Francisco, and asked them about Feinstein and Associate Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, who are both older than the Golden Gate Bridge, I guess, and what they felt about them retirement. Were you surprised by what they told you?
I was surprised to the extent that I went into it. I mean, look, I didn't go in to prove a point to say Dianne should go or Dianne shouldn't go or Breyer should go or shouldn't go. I was interested in them, and I was sort of expecting them to talk about the physical toll that age takes in terms of, you're not as sharp as this or as that or whatever. And I asked them, there were like 11 of them, if I'm remembering. I asked them, do you support a mandatory retirement age? And they were like, no. I worked into my 70s, I worked into my 80s. I still had, all my marbles. So that was a little surprising. In Breyer's case, it was just with Dianne Feinstein, there was some of that. There was some of the feeling that she has lost a step, that she's not as mentally sharp as she was. But their objection to her and Breyer were much more grounded in philosophy, in principle. In Breyer's case, the idea that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg hung around too long, should have let, should have gone when Obama had the chance to appoint her replacement as opposed to letting Trump do it. In Feinstein's case, the idea that she's not liberal enough for them on things like the filibuster and such. But yeah, that was a surprise to me. I really thought they'd be talking about how, you're getting up there and the aches and the pains. And I know when I hit that age, I wasn't all that I used to be. But again, it was sort of more philosophical than physical, if you will.
Yeah, the Breyer thing is a huge deal. I mean, Feinstein, we've talked about, she's elected to a 6-year term. Okay, whatever. I'm telling you, I don't think she's going anywhere just based on my knowledge of her. But yeah, I also don't think that she'll probably seek another term. But Breyer is a big deal because of the Ginsburg case, and because this is having talked about the midterms, this is potentially a very small window for Democrats to be able to get a Supreme Court justice approved. What's your take on that? He seems, they seem very reluctant to kind of try to nudge him out or hint that he ought to go. Do you have a sense of that?
I don't know that I've ever been within. Well, I'm sure I've been within, a few miles radius of Stephen Breyer. Never spoke with him. Don't claim any expertise, but just knowing human nature, I would think there's a part of him that just, wants to tell people, how do I put this in such a way that I won't draw. I guess the FCC doesn't monitor this, but tell them to go jump in a lake is how I would put it, right? If people are telling you, they had a truck that was driving around the Supreme Court saying time to go, I don't think that's terribly effective. I think if anything to the contrary, I think it could get his back up and have him say, who are you to tell me what to do? And I agree with you as far as Senator Feinstein goes. Look, she was reelected in 2018. She wasn't a 16-year-old ingenue at the time. She was 85. I happen to agree with you that I don't think she will leave on her terms, and will not want to be seen as being pushed out. The irony is, I've had conversations with folks who suggest that she is very, very mindful of her legacy and how she will be remembered. And I actually did a column some time back, and the headline was The Tragedy of Dianne Feinstein. The tragedy being, you of all people, you literally wrote the book. I mean, she's had this remarkable career. I mean, say what you will about Dianne Feinstein. She had a remarkable, incredible career, pioneering in so many ways. And to me, the tragedy of Dianne Feinstein that I referred to is the possibility and the prospect that she's going to be remembered by this last act in her life, which is not the most dramatic or the most flattering necessarily.
Yeah. And the other thing is she's gotten on the wrong side of the filibuster issue, or she's been on the wrong side of the filibuster issue in terms of where the Democratic Party is in California, at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I even quoted you in that column as the expert on Dianne you are. And if I'm remembering your words correctly, you said she's not performative. I mean, so much of politics these days is performative. And Dianne is out of step with today's politics. And I don't mean that necessarily in a critical way, but she's thoughtful. She's policy driven. She's not going on Rachel Maddow and lighting her hair on fire every night. And that's what's rewarded these days in politics. She is of another age, an age where, again, it was about taking the half loaf if you couldn't get the whole one, about negotiation, about compromise. All those things are out of fashion these days.
Yeah. And let me end by just transitioning to yet another column of yours, this guy, Tito Ortiz.
Yes.
The Huntington Beach City Councilman. I mean, there's the example of the performative politician. I think you called it loudmouth, or the headline did anyway. I mean, what was that saga? Brief as
well. Here's the guy who he was with the World Wrestling Federation or whatever, or
martial arts. He was amazing.
There you go. I keep expecting him to knock on the door and flatten me after writing that column. But yes, I mean, here's a guy who went to a lot of rallies and would fly around Huntington Harbor flying his Trump flag, and he wasn't seen and didn't seem to attempt to be a very serious legislator. I mean, the city council, both of us in the course of our lifetime have covered city councils. It's about zoning, it's about budgets, it's about administration. It's a lot of very, very boring stuff. And it's not about giving speeches. It's not about going on Fox News and lighting your hair on fire, both of which he was very, very good at. The actual substantive work of being on the city council seemed to appeal to him much less. So I think after 3 months or so, he bailed.
Yeah. But that is what gets rewarded now. I mean, it's how many your tweets and the online fundraising has a great deal to do with it. That's the model for it, and that's what people respond to. I mean, do you ever feel like? I mean, because every day I'm enraged. Well, as soon as I get done reading the news in the morning, because it's all changed. I mean, and you've been with it long enough. I mean, this is not normal. What's going on?
No, you hit on a good point. I think I had a line in one of those columns where I was saying, when you would have put out a fundraiser saying, I'm going to go back to Washington and I'm going to negotiate, I'm going to compromise for the best deal I can get, right? Oh, well, let me get out my checkbook and write you some money for, right? It's the outrage, it's the anger, it's the inflammatory stuff that really gets people going. It is this unvirtuous cycle that we're in right now. And I don't know what it'll take to get out of it if we ever do.
All right.
Is that a sad enough note to end on?
That's perfect. That's exactly, that's my brand, brother. If you're not bummed enough, come to Newsmakers. All right.
Exactly. We'll leave you on a slow respond.
He writes a great column, newsletter, the fastest growing political newsletter in California. I don't know who's going to check that, but how do you subscribe? Where do people go to subscribe to the news?
If anyone wants to, just you can just email me, mark.barabak, B-A-R-A-B-A-K, mark.barabak at LA Times. If you want to get it, just send me your email and I'll add you.
All right, brother. Stay safe out there.
All righty, you too. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.